Generation Z in a recent study just said they are more affiliated with the Catholic Church than the Protestant Church. This is the first time this has ever happened in American history. Traditionally, we are a Protestant country. We were founded by Protestants, and we have been that way ever since. But for those who are in the conversation, especially here on YouTube, this probably does not come as a surprise. Now, this study, it's not a Christian study, and I'll be very curious to see what happens in studies like Berna or Pew, but this might be one of the first indicators that a true shift in America could be happening. And again, this has been a conversation for about 2 years now of that the masses are exploding. A lot of the Christian community on YouTube seems to be Catholic. I know from my own comment section. And this TikTok, this Catholic bro phenomenon, we've all said this could be happening, but we didn't have the studies to show it. This is the first study, potentially, it's in the margin of error. It's 21% Catholic and 19% Protestant. There is a margin of error, but potentially could show us something that is truly happening in America. And there's a couple things that I want to say right off the bat. One, I do not see the Catholic Church as my enemy. I'm not one of those Protestants that think it's a true false church, that the Pope is the Antichrist, and that it's Protestants versus Catholics. I'm just not in that camp. I truly believe that it's a true church and that they have believers in their congregations, just like Protestants have believers in their congregations. I do believe that the Protestant Reformation was a good thing for both sides. I believe that it was truly restoring some of the gospel where we had lost it, and that for the Catholic Church, they needed someone to come in and challenge them. And so I believe that that was a good thing. I don't believe Martin Luther went out to start his own thing. I believe he was kicked out of the church, and so that's not necessarily a schism. That was someone who was forced out of the church and did what he was supposed to do, and it challenged both sides. And so I'm a proud Protestant, but I'm not a Catholic hater, so to speak. And so I don't see them as my enemy. So in this, I don't really want to talk about that this is a terrible thing for Christianity because people are going to a false religion. That's not the tone that I want to take. I more want to talk about Protestants versus Protestants, in that right now we are beating ourselves and we have no idea. And that this is the first, I would say, amount of data, a data set that shows us that we're not as healthy, we're not as dominant, and we're not untouchable here in America like we think we are. And a couple things that we can really take from this study is that we can look at the Catholic Church and see what they might be doing to engage with a younger generation. Because with the Jesus movement and with the seeker-sensitive movement or the megachurch movement, there was a lot of things that we thought that the younger generation absolutely needed in order to come to church. That they wanted nothing to do with something that was structured, something that was disciplined, something that seemed old. They didn't want that. They would never come to church if that was the case. They want something that's more energetic, something that's more light and joyful, something that's consumeristic, like good music or a really good sermon. That's how you get people in the door. That's what they truly care about. But what this is showing us is the Catholic Church hasn't really moved too much. They have the Novus Ordo and people have their opinions about that. But we see out of all the Catholic churches, something that's really moving is the traditional Latin Mass. People are wanting to go back to something that's slower, that's more traditional, more reverent, and really has an answer for a lot of their questions. The good thing about the Catholic Church, whether you like it or not, is they have answers for almost everything. They know where they stand on LGBTQ across the world. They know where they stand on gay marriages or the death penalty, or what does the sacraments truly mean. You don't go to a different Catholic church and get different answers. All of them believe in this thing and where they stand on it because they believe in the authority of the church. While a Protestant church, in some ways relatively cowardly, has a different answer for every single thing. And it's really hard to get some answers as a person coming up in the younger generations on what you truly believe about it. Because if we were to give those answers, that would shut people off and that would come off as harsh. But what we're seeing is those generations want that. But here's where we get to what I really want to talk about. Protestants need to get it together. And I mean this to my core. Over the past, I'd say 6 months, I have visited, 20 to 30 churches at this point across the Protestant spectrum. My background is I was in a non-denominational church, really an SBC church, but a very conservative church. And so my theology was conservative, my politics are conservative, and that's the bubble that I was used to. As you know how my story goes, I was done with the evangelical megachurch model, and so I wanted to find something else. As I have gone into the main lines and as I've gone into these more traditional Protestant churches, I have been extremely discouraged. Probably the most discouraged I've ever been in my faith because of this absolutely liberal and woke mindset that has penetrated the Protestant church. And most of us in the evangelical world have no idea that this is happening. So I'm actually going to come at both sides of the equation because something's happening in both. But if you don't know, maybe you've heard about it, but the mainline churches are extremely liberal. They are totally captivated by this social contagion of LGBTQ, transgenderism, wokeism, feminism. A lot of these churches either have women pastors or they're saturated with women elders. And almost every single time there are women elders and women pastors, all of these woke ideologies follow very closely behind. I was in a church the other day that had a transgender drag show on the calendar for this upcoming week. And that's where we're at. And that's not the outlier. That was right down the street for me. And I'm in a very conservative state. So it's all over. This is really happening behind the scenes. And I think most Protestants don't know that it's happening, especially if you're in the evangelical or conservative sect. And so I'm in a conservative state and I'm walking into all these traditional Protestant churches and they are all this way. They are all focused on identity politics. They're focused on feminism and making sure women get leadership and all of these different things that have completely distorted the gospel, but are also completely repellent of the younger generations. Because the younger generations that are coming up, they're conservative. They're traditional. They want traditional families. They don't want social contagion taking over their churches. They want a male pastor with male elders because that's what the gospel in the New Testament says. And they are really wanting to get down and dirty with evangelism and sharing the gospel with people. And they don't want to bring their friends and their family to this liberal woke church. This is happening. And Protestants need to know that. But other than that, also in the evangelical world, this is happening too, just no one knows about it. In the past couple months, because of the conversations that I'm putting out there are many liberal women that are embedded into these evangelical megachurches, and the pastors in the congregation has no idea. And so they sit in these congregations because it's relatively easy. There's a bunch of young people, especially if you're dating and you're single. You go into these mega churches. It's great music. It's great teaching. You see people all your age all around. And so you feel like you're in a really cool, hip spot. Yet your political ideology and your theology is extremely liberal. But because the sermons don't talk about that, and because there's no church discipline, there's no church catechizing, and so like actually bringing people up in the faith, they can hide in these large congregations and no one has any idea. And so that's going to fester. That's going to continue to build up because Protestants won't say anything. And so you have all of these conservative Protestants, especially men. This is why I started this channel. You have all these guys who are so scared to say anything controversial, talk about these social politic issues, instead of actually engaging with it head on. They're letting all of these things simmer underneath the surface. And basically what it's coming to is a completely ineffective church, an ineffective Protestant church. And it's not just happening in the main lines, it's happening in the evangelical church as well, because they're not being discipled. They're not actually learning the gospel. Their lives don't look like what it truly means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. And so they're completely ineffective. And we're seeing that take place here on YouTube. We have guys like Gavin Ortland that's basically alone in his own little world trying to defend and trying to keep back all this liberal ideology. And one of the only places that Protestants can go of like, yeah, this is our Protestant spokesperson. But yet there's not people that are able to take on these churches. Seminaries are drying up in the Protestant sphere. People are not going into ministry. These megachurch pastors are not replacing themselves. Instead, they're starting satellite campuses. And so Protestants versus Protestants, we're falling apart and we have no idea. And so we don't even really have to talk about Protestants versus Catholics or Catholics versus Orthodox or whatever it might be. Protestants are completely sabotaging themselves. The Protestant church is taking out the Protestant church, and we refuse to see it. And what's so interesting is if you were just to tune your ear to what this younger generation wants and what they're saying, they're telling you everything that you need to know. I sit down with younger people all the time, and they might love their church, but the first thing they say is, "Man, I'm thinking about leaving my mega church. Like I want something that's more slow, more reverential. I'm having a different opinion on the sacraments, but I don't know where to go." Like they're telling you, they will tell you. And so there's something we can learn about this. And I truly think the Catholic Church plays the long game. And those who play the long game usually always win in the end. If you think about your finances, you think about generational wealth, you think about billionaires, they talk in decades. They talk in 40, 50 years in compound interest, or I'm in the business world. And what's interesting is I see the Protestant church thinking so short term on everything that we do, whether it is the newest trends, worship trends, social media trends, and how can we engage with that? How do we become social media famous rather than actually taking up leadership in our local church, wanting to become elders, deacons, take on the pulpit eventually? Instead, we think very short term, and it works for a second, but it usually never works for the long term. And we could see the Catholic and Orthodox Church, they have historically just stuck to their guns and slowly gained ground, slowly took dominion. And over time, it works because they know who they are. They know that it's good, true, and beautiful. They know what they believe about something. And eventually, people will come around because it's true. And even though there are some hangups that I have with the Catholic Church, there are some times that I wish I was Catholic. I really do. I think there's something compelling about the unity, about the sacraments, about historically sticking together and wanting to unify no matter what, about the reverence and awe. I wish I was Catholic. There are some things that I just can't get over, but there are people that come up to me all the time that are really looking into Catholicism, that really do think it has a compelling argument. So Protestants need to understand that this is a long-term game. And I'm looking at you, Protestant man. Right now, we are at war. We're at war with the culture. We're at war with ourselves. And it's really just come from conservative, good Christian men who have stood in the back, who have been maybe embarrassed of who they are as maybe white Christian men who have traditional values, who don't want to speak or get in political trouble. Maybe they didn't want to lose their job. But this is the time. I talk about this in every video, but I have a private school community called Protestant Gentlemen Institute, where I am trying to gather like-minded men who truly believe in the vision of taking back the church, taking back the Protestant church, and wanting to be more historical in our views. But if we don't stand up right now, I'm telling you, the Protestant church is going to be in a really bad place in 10 to 20 years from now. And this isn't for you. This is for your kids. This is for the next generation of Christians. And so I'm making this video. Again, I'm not bashing the Catholics. I'm not even surprised. But really, I'm talking to my Protestant men. It's time to get up. It's time to really start taking chances, being bold about your perspectives. If they are historical Protestant, they are saturated in the gospel, now is the time to say something. It's time to mentor younger people. It's time to get engaged in your church. It's time to be outspoken in your workplaces. It is time. And the younger generation is starving for it. They're starving for truth, and they're starving for people who know who they are. And they're starving for unity, like true unity. In a country that is so broken, a Western civilization that is on the brink of something catastrophic, I think we can pull it back together, but truly, they want something that is true and unified. And the Protestant church needs to understand that. that it does matter, that the visible church, we're so focused on the invisible church as a Protestant denomination. The invisible church is important, but so is the visible church here on earth, the local body. Things like the church do matter here on earth. The way that it's constructed, the way that we care about things. If we don't care about the visible church, then we think it's okay to just get a strip mall and put a church in the most ugly buildings possible because it doesn't matter. It does matter. It does matter. Excellence does matter. Reverence, awe, holiness, discipline, they matter. And they matter to the younger generation. And as Protestants, we should want to engage in that conversation. Why wouldn't we? And so this is a call to arms, and I'm going to continue to make content like this. I'm going to continue to call us together because it matters. I'll see you in the next one.